Hello, y'all. It is Sammy. We have another sit down video for today. And this video is all about how I pay for college, how I've afforded a 4-year institution on just private scholarships. The only preface I have is if you guys are watching this video, which I assume you're watching this video to figure out how you can apply for scholarships, how you can find them, any tips and tricks I have as someone who has won over about $50,000 in scholarship funds. My only thing for this video is I am not going to be saying any of the ones I got scholarships from, except the National FFA organization. That is the only one I will name by name. Everything else I'm just going to not use their name. Not because I'm not grateful for the money they gave me. I just don't know how this video will all go, and I don't want them getting any press that they don't want or anything like that. First, we're going to kind of start with my stats. I do think that stats do play a role in scholarship processes. Not all the time do they 100% matter, but they do matter in some context. I had a 4.0 high school GPA. I took multiple APs, and I also did 43 credits at a junior college. My junior college GPA is horrible. I am not going to put that on the internet. If you know me in real life, you know what my junior college GPA is, and that's kind of all I'm saying with that. So I did have that kind of against me, but I also didn't put that on a lot of my applications. So I went to JC for all 4 years in high school. I did that. I did 4 years of active involvement in the FFA organization. I served multiple offices. I was heavily involved. I had multiple SAE projects, and a lot of my scholarships did come from agriculture organizations. So being an ag was very important for a lot of my applications. So focus on what's important for your guys's. I had multiple clubs. I was VITA president for 2 years. VITA is a club that was all focused on helping kids apply for FAFSA, apply for scholarships, and apply for schools. So we were all a college success club. I was in CTEL, which is Career Technical Education and Leadership Club. I was a wellness council founder and intern, so I helped run my school's first ever wellness center. And so a lot of my involvement came from that. Overall, I was just very, very involved in high school. I did take the SAT. I scored absolutely horrible in the SAT. I want to go at a 10-10. I am not a test taker. I have realized that now. I probably should have taken the ACT. But for my year of applying to schools and scholarships, the SAT was not required as heavily as it is now. So that is my grain of salt. But that is kind of my stats. I have my little iced espresso because I am a college student, so I drink a lot of caffeine. It's very good. A little sweet. But, so we're going to kind of start over, like, my scholarship process. I started applying for scholarships the summer of my senior year of high school. So I've been summer 2024. The first scholarship I ever got technically was award money. I competed in a public speaking competition in California, and I won a $500 scholarship. That was the very first scholarship I ever received, and I hold that very near and dear because obviously I worked very hard for it. It was public speaking. I had to do a speech, and so that was the first one I got. I knew from very young that I was going to be 100% responsible for any college tuition. So if I had to get loans, if I had to get scholarships, like that was going to be on me. I was going to be paying for my education. Obviously, my parents would love to be able to pay for my education, but that just wasn't a possibility. And so I knew from almost middle school that if I wanted to go to college, I was going to be paying for it. And so I knew I wanted to go out of state, and out of state can be expensive. However, I got very lucky. I qualified for in-state tuition here at Kansas because I had a very high school GPA, and they are very good about in-state rates here at KSU. And so don't knock it. Like, don't knock going to an out-of-state school because sometimes it can be cheaper. I'm actually paying a lot less than a lot of my friends who are going to in-state schools. But I started applying, obviously, the summer before senior year. And I kept applying till I want to go the July of after I graduated, I applied for about 50 or so scholarships. I have a scholarship tracker that if you guys want me to kind of pull up, I'll probably pull it up here like my old one. I'll probably just pull up the template of it. If you guys want me to release that template, I am so more than willing to do so. But kind of after I got that first one, I was kind of on a roll, and I was applying to scholarships left and right. If I saw one that matched any of my majors, I was applying as an agriculture communications major with a minor in pre-law or marketing. That's kind of what I love my applications for saying. So that just some background information. I was a ag communications major, and so I started applying to so many. I found out typically a lot of scholarships will start telling you in March or April. And so that's when I found out that I was a recipient of the Tractor Supply 4-year scholarship from the National FFA organization. And so that was a big turning point for me in my scholarship journey. That was obviously a massive scholarship that paid for almost half of my first year at KSU. And so by the end of my senior year of high school, I had received about $25,000 in scholarship funds, and I've continued to receive more past that while I've been in school. And that is not considering anything I have received from K-State, KSN. That is all just private scholarships. And so that was kind of how my scholarship journey started, and why I'm so very much passionate about kids now applying for scholarships. So I think the next part is going to be the tips and tricks that you guys are probably here for, so that you guys can probably skip the kind of my story about scholarships. The first thing I'm going to kind of hit on is academics. Academics do matter in a lot of scholarship applications. I'm not going to say they always do, because I have plenty of local scholarships that did not care about GPA, but some of these more national ones do. So I do recommend, if you can have a higher GPA, do it. But if you do not have a higher GPA for some odd reason, medical hardships, you had to work while in high school, that is okay. And use that to your advantage. I have had a lot of my friends, or just kids I have mentored, we have written up a really good letter to go along with their scholarship applications to kind of say, hey, my freshman year of high school, I had a girl who went through a lot of medical issues. She was in and out of the hospital, so that affected her GPA. And so we wrote a letter basically saying, hey, this is why my GPA isn't the highest. And that was taken very well by the scholarship committee, because that kind of gives them background information. The scholarship committees are not there to harm you. They want to get to know you. They want to know who you are and why they should pick you. And so if you've had something drastic like that, let them know. Write a letter to go along with your application. It never will hurt you explaining your circumstances. If anything, it helps. So that's my kind of tidbit on GPA and all that fun stuff. Now, involvement. I always recommend, if you can, have one club. It doesn't have to be like a really big club. Have one club that you're the most involved in, because having just one is 10 times better than having zero. The way I always focus on scholarships is you typically have 5 activities you're allowed to enter. And the way I always went about it was, I would do the one that I had the most experience in, which for me was always the FFA. That was the one I did the most in. And then I would do one that had the most impact. And so for me, that was Wellness Youth Council. I did a lot of cool things with that, from Wellness Wednesdays to getting a wellness center built to touring funders and all that. So that was always my one that had the most impact. And so pick whichever one has the most impact for you, whether that's Key Club, Lions Club, something like that. Go ahead and pick that one. I always did one that I had more leadership in than the rest. I did that. Typically, it was my Vita Club. And then I did one that was community-based. And so I was in the Grange, and so that was my community-based club. And then lastly, I always recommend doing one of your community services in your clubs. I was an Ag Booster volunteer from 2014 till 2025 when I graduated. That was my last year doing fair with them. And so I volunteered for 10 plus years. And so I always recommend, if you have volunteer experience that can be used in the activities box, go ahead and do it. My biggest thing for a lot of these activities boxes is highlight your leadership, highlight your accomplishments in that activity. If you got recognized for being an outstanding member of January of 25, put that. Put the awards that you have received in that club. Put the things you've done. If you've gone to conferences with that club, put those. If you have served as any leadership position, put those, and put exactly what you did as that leadership position. When I was applying for clubs, VITA is not a every single school type of club. That was a school club particularly for where I went to high school. And so I made very particular things of explaining what VITA was, what we did, and then what I did as VITA president for 2 years. And so that is very important, is over-explain. Don't be afraid to explain what the FFA is or what 4-H is, because not everyone that looks at your application is going to know exactly what you're talking about. If it is an acronym like CTEL was, explain what the acronym was. I had a lot of people who did not know what CTEL was because they did not go to a career technical education school. And so, explain what the acronyms mean. Explain exactly what your role was. If you were a reporter, what does that mean? What did you do? And that is my biggest thing with clubs, is explain what you did, when you did it, the years that you were involved, and always pick the ones that have the most importance to you. Obviously, my other advice for clubs is, if you are applying for a major-based scholarship, use the clubs that relate to your major or make them relate. So obviously I was going for AgCom, and so VITA might have not fit that because that isn't 100% agriculture or communications, but I geared it towards being communications. Like, in this club, I communicated with counselors and professors and teachers and college admissions to come and talk to us. I did a lot of communications, and that kind of influenced my decision to be AgCom. And so I really recommend, if you have clubs that relate to your major, to use those clubs to your advantage. Now we're going to kind of talk about essays. And so a lot of the scholarships I had really didn't have essays per se. They mostly had the statement of educational purpose. And what that is your statement of why you want to go to school. Obviously, mine is a little bit different, but mine really focused on, I was very passionate about agriculture mental health, and I want to get my AgCom degree to further my passions for ag mental health and to further what I'm doing in my SAE projects and to further development in my rural community. Focus on what makes you kind of special. Focus on why you want to go to school, why you want to go to the particular school you're going to, why you chose the major. This educational purpose essay is your spot to explain who you are, and what you are doing. They typically don't have word counts, but if they do, go off the word count. But don't be afraid to obviously throw in personal stories, talk about things you did in high school. Hype yourself up, because this is a huge thing. These scholarship committees are only wanting to help you and learn about you. Don't worry about what other people are putting on their essays. Worry about what you can put on yours. I think scholarships, they're so much about writing. And so, geared towards your scholarship committee, if you know who they are or if you know what the scholarship is for, gear it kind of towards what you're going to write about. I had a friend who wants to be a clinical psychologist. And so he was applying for ag scholarship because he could. You didn't have to be a correct ag major to apply for this one. But he was like, Sammy, I'm not an ag major, they're not going to pick me. I'm like, are you not an ag major? Are you a clinical psychologist that wants to come back and work in rural ag communities and work with farm workers and farmers? There are so many ways that you can write things to gear towards whoever scholarship you're applying for. And so always write to gear towards who could be reading this. I also recommend in these essays, don't say anything controversial. Don't say anything that could be taken a weird way. You don't want to get anything that could get you kind of docked points, because there is always a rubric that these scholarship committees go off of. So not all of the rubrics are posted. Sometimes I was able to find the scholarship rubric I know National FFA has theirs posted, so you can always go off their National FFA's rubric if they are posting this, if that is when you're applying to. For essays, always follow the prompt. Restate the prompt at some point in your essay if you are answering a certain question. If it asks you what you're going to do with your college degree, say at some point, with my college degree, I am going to. You don't have to start your essay with that. I always recommend starting with some interesting hook. I loved my hooks in a lot of my essays. So always start it with something interesting, a story, a sound. There's so much you can do with hooks, but always refer back to the question at some point. Say, with my degree, I plan to, or I plan to influence my community by doing this. Stuff like that always helps, because sometimes it is a automated system for some scholarships, and so some scholarships, they're ran through machines. They're looking for keywords like that. They're looking for, did they answer the question? And so if you can say your question back, I recommend doing so. Obviously, each essay is going to be a little different, and there's kind of bits and pieces. My biggest thing is follow the word count. If it says 500 words, get to 499 if you can. Try not to be too far from the word count. And just write. My biggest advice also when you're writing is write it through Grammarly, check the grammar, send it to somebody, send it to a friend, send it to a trusted adult, send it to your mom, send it to a teacher, send it to somebody, because what you may think sounds very good might not. I have had a couple grammar issues that Grammarly didn't catch, that if I hadn't sent it to my mom, that I never would have noticed, because they sounded just fine to me, but from a fresh pair of eyes, they didn't. My other advice when you're writing is let it rest for a day. Take a break, come back to it the next day with a fresh pair of eyes, and then rewrite it, because sometimes what you think sounded good in the moment does not sound good a day later. And so that's my big tip on that, on the essay part of a scholarship application. I'm back. I had to look at my notes for this because I was giving it in misorder. So I might be reordering this video. I'm probably going to cut this clip out for my own self. But we're going to go on how to find scholarships. Finding scholarships is honestly probably the hardest part about the scholarship application, because once you have it, it's 10 times easier to apply. My biggest advice is look up your major scholarship, your major organizations that offer scholarships. Ask AI. That's always a good thing. Talk to your school counselors, because my school, obviously, they posted like a scholarship bulletin. If your school does the same, follow those. Go around your local community, see if anyone does a lot of scholarships, and then look at the clubs you're in and see if they have national organizations, because a lot of those do they do scholarships like Elks, Eagles, National FA, National 4-H, Grange, things like that. Almost always have a national scholarship that you almost always qualify for, because you're a member of that club. So go look at that, go find those, because those are typically underapplied for if they are not regularly publicized. And so look at what you're involved in, go off of that, go towards the community, and then ask different family members, because a lot of workplaces also offer scholarships to nieces and nephews, granddaughters and grandsons, daughters and sons of people who work in their offices or work for them. They qualify for scholarships. I know I qualified for a couple scholarships because of where my parents worked, and so that is my biggest advice for finding them, is Google and look across the community, look across of where your family works, where you work. A lot of places that hire teenagers, I know Chick-fil-A, Burger King, Taco Bell, KFC, they do scholarships for employees. So always look for that as well, because there are scholarships that go constantly unapplied for because people don't know they exist. So find the ones that don't exist if you can. ChatGPT was a huge source for me. I would say, hey, I'm an ag communication student. I was in FFA and this, and find me scholarships. And I actually got a couple of scholarships that they found for me. If you are in the FFA, watch your state association, see what they post, because a couple of scholarships I did end up receiving, my state association posted, and so that is a huge thing when finding scholarships. just look. Google community. Obviously, every person, I can't tell you guys exactly where to find yours because I grew up in a different place than a lot of you will. And obviously, I'm as an ag major. Not all of you guys are majoring in agriculture, so if you have more questions, feel free to DM me. One of the biggest tips I have while in the scholarship process is keeping track of them. Have a notes app where you just list what you have applied for. Or I started using Notion. This is not sponsored, but I absolutely love Notion for scholarships. I can show you guys a template that I made, but I keep track of what the name is, when they're due, how many rec letters do they need, have I completed it, when do I find out if I was a recipient, does it go to me or my school, and then I'll put, yes, I got it, no, I didn't, and then I also have a money tracker that goes along with that. I haven't fully figured out how to completely hook that up on Notion, but I do have that template if you guys want it. I also, my senior, at some point before I discovered Notion, I was just using my Samsung Notes app, kind of like this. I would just keep track of the ones I applied to, just put it in a list, and if it was on that list, that meant I finished the application and I applied for it. And so I would go in and kind of put, like, no, yes, no, if I got it or not, but that was kind of how I kept track. Now, obviously, I'm a little bit more sophisticated with how I track scholarships, but even using just a pen and paper, just writing them down when they're due, that is the biggest thing. Keep a track of the due dates, because even now, sometimes due dates slip away, and if you don't have them written down, you'll think they haven't passed, but they have passed, or they're about to pass. So my biggest thing is keep track of where you're applying to, when you'll find out, and the due date. Those are the 3 biggest things to keep track of. Okay, now you've finished your application, but now you need rec letters. How do you get those? Who do you ask? I always recommend having 3 on hand. So my biggest advice is not all scholarships will have where you have to have a one written directly to them. If they don't ask for that, you don't have to do it. So my biggest advice is getting 3 recommendation letters from people who matter to you. I recommend a club advisor, a former boss if you have worked, or someone you volunteered with is always a good one, and a mentor. So I always had mine for my Wellness Youth Council director. I had one from my former employer, and then I did one from someone who was my mentor and did a lot with me within the FFA. And so those were my 3 that I used pretty infrequently. My other advice for rec letters is if you're in a club and that, like, you have someone from that club's organization, have them. Like, for my FFA ones, my advisor wrote a lot of them, because having your advisor made a lot of sense for the FFA ones, because she works for the National FFA, if that makes sense. And so for stuff like that, or for my Grange scholarships, I had my Grange president write a lot of my scholarships for that, or scholarship rec letters, because they were in the Grange, and so their name carried a little bit more weight than, like, my employers would have in this particular context. How do you ask for rec letters is also a thing. I recommend email. Obviously, in-person conversation is great, but the email kind of gives them something to look back on. I always recommend saying, hey, good morning, blank. I'm wondering if you could write me a recommendation letter for tell them the scholarship, or just say a general rec letter for scholarship season. I think you'd be great because I worked with you on blah, blah, blah. I was in your club for how many years, or how you have a personal connection to this teacher, or this person that you're asking to write you a scholarship recommendation letter. So once you have that part of the email, then put what they could add. Some good things to highlight is my club involvement with the FFA, my club involvement with VITA, my club involvement with this. And then I always recommend, especially if you're in college and you're asking a professor, to include your resume and to include a summary of activities you're doing. And if this is for a particular scholarship, which sometimes it is, I recommend 100% adding what scholarship in your application if you haven't completed. Add your essay so they know what to say, like they could bring up points that you brought up in your essay. So that is a big thing with rec letters. And get them on time. I I am guilty of it, of having emergency rec letters written for me. But if you can, get them written probably about January, February. Obviously, it's past that, but if you're looking back on this, January, February, March, because most scholarships are starting to be due at the end of March. So get them done as soon as possible. Give your person as much time, because rec letters can take a long time to write. And you don't want to be rushing them, and they don't want to be like disappointing you if they get turned in late. So that's my biggest tips for rec letters. Some scholarships will require scholarship interviews, and my biggest tips for that really are: show up to the interview like a job interview, dress really professionally. If they tell you to be just a nice t-shirt, wear a blouse and slacks. Just overdress. You're never going to get points docked off of you for overdressing. I had one where I interviewed that was just said nice clothing. Well, my version of nice clothing was a blazer and my FFA OD, other than like my scarf and jacket. So a white button up and a black pencil skirt, because I had an FFA event that same day. So for me, that was nice clothes. But I saw people showing up in ripped jeans and a t-shirt. Everyone's definition is different. So overdress, it's okay to be overdressed. You're never going to lose points for that. I got a lot of cred for that at the end of the day. Even though I didn't get that scholarship, a lot of the committee was very happy that I did dress really nice, because it was a very good, easy way to remember me by. So obviously dress nice. If they ask you to wear official dress for whatever club, if that's your 4-H jacket, if that's your FFA jacket, if that's a club vest or a club blazer, because I know a lot of like the FCCLA or DECA have blazers, wear that. Wear what they tell you to wear if they are very like particular about it. When you walk in, shake their hands. When you leave, shake their hands. Obviously, they're going to have questions. A lot of the questions are just getting to know you, who you are. Tell your life story. My biggest also advice is, I know I had so many of them ask me, why should I pick you over others? If you get asked that, do not say, well, I'm better than them, or, well, those people are horrible. I've seen that happen. I have been in rooms where I've heard people be like, well, I don't like those people, or those people are horrible. Don't be like that. Don't say it. Don't say anything negative against the people you are applying for a scholarship with. Say, you have the most difficult choice. We are all amazing students. I stand out because A, or I'm different from the rest because B. Focus on you and don't focus on others. That's my biggest tip for interviews. Focus on what makes you different. Focus on why they should choose you. Don't focus on what other people are putting. Focus on you. I also recommend, if you can find out how many people are interviewing you, ask, because I always brought cards. I brought thank you cards into the interview room, and I would hand them out when I left. That was got me a lot of prep as well. I had a lot of scholarship committees that really, really liked it. I had thank you cards pre-written. If you don't know who's interviewing you, I always went with, say, have at least 5. That was always a good number. Have at least 5, and just address them the Dear Scholarship Committee member. You don't have to have their name. Obviously, it's nice to have their name, but obviously that's not always possible. And so that's what I would do. I was bring thank you cards written. It really doesn't have to be that hard. It was always, thank you for taking the time to interview me. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, especially because I will be going to college. Tell them where you're going to school, what you're studying, and that's about it. There's so many thank you card templates. Just follow those. I always just got mine off the National RFA organization. My actual cards, I still use those. So you can literally just have blank note cards in an envelope. It's okay. I so recommend it, though. It does make you stand out. Okay, now you have the scholarship. What do you do next? My biggest advice is thank you cards. Send them. I would prep mine in advance if I could. Obviously, you can't always. But find the address of wherever it was from. If they don't have their address posted, you can call. I always did that. Sometimes I wasn't always, I think there were 2 scholarships I wasn't able to send thank you cards for because they didn't have an address. Um, they didn't have like a P.O. box or anything, so I had to hand deliver those. But find if they have an address. My advice is thank you. Always put thank you, obviously, to who. So, are you thankful to the Blue Sky Committee or the whatever the organization's name is? So, okay, for National FFA, dear National FFA, thank you so much. Or for me, I got the Tractor Supply one as well. So, dear Tractor Supply, National FFA, thank you so much for this scholarship. I am very grateful. This scholarship will be going towards my tuition, room, and board at whatever school you're going to. So, Kansas State University. I am so excited to be able to study whatever you're studying. For me, it was AgCom. And because of the scholarship, I'm able to focus on my education or be able to attend whatever. Always focus on where this money is going, how grateful for you are, and then, like, just overall, just thank them. Even if it's the shortest thank you letter ever, that still means a lot to people. I have gone to the, like, offices of where I've gotten scholarships from in the past and seen my thank you card hung up. So, like, they really do care. I know one social media of a place I got a scholarship from posted mine because they thought it was so sweet. I also recommend, if you can, include pictures. For my senior grad, I did all my thank you cards after my graduation party, but for my graduation party, I got little coasters from Walgreens, and I had so many left over that I used those as my pictures. They were cute little coasters. But include, like, a headshot or one of your senior pictures. Get them printed at Walgreens. That's what I did. They can be very inexpensive. And slip one in the card. You're probably like, they don't want a picture of me. They probably do. None of them ever got thrown away. They always got put, like, with rest of the scholarship thank you cards or hung up. Because that puts a name to the face and they will remember you. I have scholarships this year that I've applied for and gotten because they remembered me from last year, like, oh, you're the one that sent that really nice thank you letter. And then if you don't get a scholarship, which is going to happen, you're going to get rejected from them. It's okay. Picking up from my little last point of you're going to get rejected, and that's perfectly okay. Sometimes they don't always go the way you want. Sometimes there was just so many applicants, or they had someone who had worked for them, and that's why they picked them. You never fully know why you weren't chosen for a scholarship, but my advice is, if you know the people you applied for, ask. Don't be afraid to be like, oh, thank you so much. Can you tell me what was exactly, like, not wrong with your application, but what you guys think I can improve on? Because I had one that told me, hey, like, we didn't really like how you wrote this first essay. That was one of the big reasons we didn't pick you. So when I'm reapplying to them again this year, I'm rewriting that first essay. And so don't be afraid to ask people, because at the end of the day, they want to encourage young people to go to school, and they want to encourage young people to go into the workforce. And so don't be scared to ask, because at the end of the day, the worst they could say is we don't really know, we can't tell you. Most of the time they will give you some type of feedback, and they will remember that you are trying to be rememberable when you do certain things for scholarships. So if you do reapply, they will remember that. So be afraid to ask. My lips are so chapped from this Midwest weather. But my last bit for this YouTube video, for the scholarship video, is really don't let this ruin your friendships. Don't let this ruin your family. Like, I had so many people at the beginning of my senior who were great friends with me, and by the end hated me because I kept getting scholarships. You are not competing against your friends. You're not competing against your school. And I really, obviously I'm privileged to be able to say that, but you're not competing against them. They're not your sworn enemies. I have a lot of friends now that are trying to focus on how can I one up I know this other girl's applying for it. How do I one up her? Don't worry about other people. Worry about what makes you different and what makes you special and all that. Don't worry necessarily about what they're doing. Focus on you. And don't let it ruin your friendship. I know for a long time, I wasn't talking about any of the scholarships I got at school. I wouldn't tell people. I had one friend, one singular friend that I would tell when I got one to, because she was very supportive, and if she told me she got one, I was very supportive of her, and that was kind of how we went. We didn't tell anyone else, and that was okay. But don't let this ruin your friendships if you can avoid it. And if it does, because it will, scholarships are very influential in high school, and everyone wants them and everyone needs them. If you do have people who are cutting you off because you're getting too many, or you have people who are really mad that you're getting them, those people weren't your friends in the first place. A true friend will never leave you because you're succeeding and they aren't at this current moment. You will find better friends once you get to school, or you will find better friends towards the end of senior year. Don't let this get you down.